The sun that evening looked like it was throwing fire across the mall parking lot. Heat rose from the asphalt as if the ground were boiling, and people walked fast, dodging anything that could slow them down. That's why almost no one noticed the little girl sitting on the curb. She held a pink backpack tight against her chest, her hair stuck to her forehead from sweat, and her face soaked with tears. At first, she cried quietly, but when she saw nobody stopping, she cried louder, almost in panic, and even then, no one stopped. A well-dressed woman walked past her as if she didn't exist. A group of teenagers laughed, whispering something like, "What a scene!" A security guard glanced from afar and kept moving. The girl hiccuped, trying to breathe, trying to say something, but her voice kept breaking. And then a man knelt down beside her. He looked completely out of place there. Messy hair, wrinkled shirt, tired eyes. The kind of guy people would judge at first glance as one more problem. "Easy, sweetheart," he murmured, wiping her tears with his hands. "Daddy's here. Okay, just breathe." She couldn't. The more she tried to speak, the harder she cried. "I just wanted an ice cream." That tiny, simple request made the man close his eyes like he had taken a punch to the stomach. He swallowed hard, took a long breath and looked around, hoping someone, anyone, would have a bit of kindness for a moment. But the world around them kept moving like they were invisible. Kneeling there, eyes unfocused, he looked like a father who had failed at everything. But what no one knew, what no one there could imagine, was that this man had once been one of the most powerful names in the city, Fabio Montero, the businessman who had been on magazine covers for years, the man who owned 3 imported cars and a luxury penthouse, the mind behind one of the most talked-about companies of the last decade, now reduced to nothing. He rubbed his face, trying to stay composed, but despair leaked through his eyes. "I know, honey. I know you wanted it." His voice shook. "But Daddy doesn't have it right now. Daddy has nothing." The girl cried louder, and people walked even faster, until someone stopped. A pair of worn sandals stepped into the scene. A simple hand, nails without polish, held a cleaning cloth. The light blue uniform made her role obvious. Her cleaning cart waited a few steps away. It was Maria, the mall cleaner. She saw the girl crying. She heard the request. She understood everything without needing details. She looked at the father. She looked at the child, then at her own pockets, as if mentally counting the little she had. She took a breath, and then she spoke, with a voice so gentle it felt like it cracked the heavy silence around them. "Sir, is the girl hungry?" Fabio lifted his head slowly. His eyes were tired, red, drained. He tried to answer, but nothing came out. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was pain. Maybe it was the weight of seeing his own daughter ask for something so simple he couldn't give. Maria gave a soft smile, one that wasn't pity. It was humanity. "If she wants, I can buy her an ice cream." It was like time froze, the first act of kindness that day, from the person the world least expected, the only one who saw them as human beings. And that was the moment everything would change. The ice cream hadn't even been bought yet. The promise hung in the air. But before Maria took the first step toward the ice cream stand, something in Fabio's gaze drifted away, as if an old memory pulled him backward to a time when none of this would have ever happened, because Fabio Montero hadn't always been that man kneeling on hot pavement. There was a time, not long ago, when he was the kind of person who made the whole mall pause when he arrived. That same parking lot where he was now ignored had once been the backdrop for the arrival of his imported car. He would step out with sunglasses on, perfect shirt, phone in hand, carrying himself like someone who owned the world. And in a way, he did. His name was printed in business magazines. His tech company was a national reference. His corporate events were full of flashbulbs, toasts, and applauded speeches, and he believed in all of it, believed so much that he started treating people like steps beneath him. Employees, partners, suppliers, everyone seemed too small for the pedestal he had put himself on. Among them was someone he barely even noticed back then, Maria. Yes, the same cleaner now looking at him with compassion. Back then, she already worked at the mall, and she cleaned the very halls where his luxury events were held. But Fabio never looked at her twice, never realized she existed, because millionaires, when they're at the top, think nothing can collapse. But everything collapsed. The fall began slowly, quietly, like cracks that appear before a building comes down. A partner he trusted started taking small amounts, then bigger ones, then massive sums. Fabio didn't notice. He was too busy giving interviews, flying to meetings, living as if he were untouchable. When he realized it was already too late, investors pulled out, contracts disappeared, lawsuits started showing up, reporters had surrounded his house, and the army of friends disappeared overnight. Fabio tried to save whatever he could, but everything was collapsing at the same time. The company he spent 10 years building fell apart in 6 months. He lost almost everything. Home, sold to cover debts, cars, taken by the banks, credit cards, cancelled, reputation, ruined. But what hurt the most was losing his wife. She had been by his side at the peak, always smiling in photos, always posing during trips and fancy events. But at the first hint of trouble, she started complaining, then yelling, then threatening. And when the final moment came, she simply said, "I didn't get married to live like someone poor." She grabbed her bags, left, and still tried to take their daughter. But the little girl ran to her father, hugged his waist and whispered, "I'll stay with you." Those were the last words that gave Fabio any strength. And now, sitting on the curb with his daughter crying for an ice cream he couldn't afford, those memories weighed on him like a mountain. He wiped a tear before his daughter noticed. Suddenly, Maria's voice pulled him back. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, leaning down to try to see his face. His pride wanted to answer yes, but reality forced him to stay silent. Maria understood everything with one look. She didn't ask anything else, didn't judge, didn't blame. She only repeated, "I can buy the ice cream." And for the first time in a long while, Fabio felt something close to hope. Maria walked slowly toward the mall's ice cream stand, and the girl, still sniffling, held her hand with the shy trust of someone who isn't sure if she should, but wants to believe she can. Fabio stood up with difficulty. He felt heavier than he truly was, not because of his body, but because of the world sitting on his shoulders. He stayed there for a few seconds, trying to make sense of what was happening. A cleaning lady, offering help. A gesture so simple, so unexpected, so opposite to the way the world had treated him lately. For a moment, shame burned inside him. "Miss," he called, voice low, "you don't have to. I can't accept that." Maria turned around, tilted her head, and replied with a calmness that disarmed him. "But I can give it." Words that shattered whatever pride he had left. The girl looked at her father, eyes still watery, waiting for his answer as if everything depended on it. He tried to hold on to that no for a moment, but his daughter's stomach growled softly, betraying any attempt to keep his dignity. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath. "All right. Okay." Maria gave a tiny smile and gestured for the girl to follow her. The ice cream shop was busy. Children laughed, adults took pictures, couples shared cups covered in whipped cream. That light, happy atmosphere clashed with the emotional storm Fabio and his daughter were living. The attendant called out sharply, "Next!" Maria stepped forward and pointed at the freezer. "1 strawberry ice cream, please." The attendant glanced at her uniform and, instead of just serving, asked with a bored tone, "Is it for you?" Maria didn't flinch. "No, it's for her." The girl stood beside her, lightly holding the edge of Maria's uniform. The attendant finally bent down to look at her better. "Oh, okay." The ice cream was handed over with annoyance, as if such a tiny favor was too much to ask. Maria took the cup, cleaned the rim with a napkin, and crouched to the girl's level. "It's for you, sweetheart." The girl smiled faintly, but it was a real smile, one that lit up her tear-stained face. "Thank you," she whispered, shy and soft. Maria stood up and looked at Fabio, who watched from a distance with a mix of gratitude and pain that seemed to tear him apart inside. When they returned to him, he took a long breath. "Miss, that was so... I don't even know how to thank you," he said, voice cracking. "Sometimes," Maria replied, "a child just needs an ice cream. It's nothing complicated." But to him, it was. It was everything. It was the first time in weeks someone did something for him without demanding anything, without questioning, without poking at his past like it was an open wound. The girl sat again on the curb, licking her ice cream with the relief of someone finally finding a spark of peace. Fabio watched her for a few seconds, eyes damp. When he noticed Maria was still there, he apologized again. "I shouldn't have let you spend your money on us," he muttered. "On me." She shrugged lightly. "Money comes back. Kindness. Once you lose it, it doesn't return." Fabio stayed silent. Her words cut straight through him, as a truth he had never dared to admit. And maybe that was the first moment of rebuilding, even if he didn't see it yet. But the world wasn't going to make it easy, because some people saw her buying the ice cream, saw them talking, and recognized his face. Not the face of the millionaire, but the face of the man from the headlines. Whispers started, dirty looks, silent judgments sharper than any insult, and it was only the beginning. The first murmurs began like tiny cracks, barely noticeable amid the mall's noise, but within seconds they grew into a low, poisonous chorus. "Is that really him?" a woman asked, squeezing her husband's arm. "That one, the guy who went bankrupt," the man replied. "He looks nothing like before." Another group of employees whispered near the shop windows. "Guys, look at the state he's in. I saw it online. Lost everything, owes money to half the world. Now he's here pretending to be the victim." Every sentence cut like a blade. Fabio tried to ignore it, focusing on his daughter, who still held the ice cream with her tiny hands. She licked it slowly, afraid that even that small bit of joy could be taken away at any moment. Maria sensed the tension around them, but she noticed mainly the way Fabio's eyes dimmed with every whisper. She folded her arms and stared back at a few people who looked at them with contempt. "Some folks don't know what a mirror is for," she muttered under her breath, but the comments kept getting louder, sharper, until one of them finally burst like a snap. "What's this guy doing here?" a mall employee complained. "He'll scare off the customers like that." He was the head of the security area. Stiff shirt, shiny badge, the posture of someone who thinks he controls everything. He walked up fast, scanning Fabio, his daughter, and Maria. "You can't sit here," the manager said coldly. "This isn't a place for situations like this." Maria stepped forward instantly, before Fabio could even react. "This situation has a name," she replied firmly. "It's called being human." The manager raised an eyebrow, surprised at her boldness. "Maria, this doesn't concern you. Get back to work." She crossed her arms even tighter. "It concerns me when someone tries to embarrass a father and a child who aren't bothering anyone." A few people stopped to watch. The air grew heavy. Even the girl stopped eating her ice cream. Fabio opened his mouth to say something, but shame silenced him. He slowly stood up, trying to avoid more humiliation. I can leave," he murmured, eyes fixed on the floor. The manager huffed, satisfied. "That's right. Better for everyone." Maria stepped toward him. "Listen here, Mr. Antonio," she said, using his name on purpose. "When rich folks' kids make a mess around here, you smile, offer water, and even give a discount on parking. But now you want to kick out a man who's just trying to calm his daughter." The manager flushed red. "Maria, you're crossing the line." "The one crossing lines is you," she answered, "and I won't let you do that in front of a child." The once quiet crowd began to shift. Some whispered now in her favor. Fabio watched everything as if outside his own body. Never, not once in his life, had anyone stood up for him like that. He had always been the man who defended himself, or thought he did. Now, he needed someone. The manager tried to regain control. "Look, I'm just following rules." "Then show me the rule that says, kick out parents with kids because they look poor." Maria shot back. "Show me. I'll wait." The manager stuttered, unable to answer. Maria took a slow breath and finished, steady but not shouting, "If you want to call someone, go ahead. But I'm not letting you humiliate the two of them for nothing, not today." The silence that followed hit the manager harder than any insult. He turned his back, annoyed, and walked away muttering. Maria looked at Fabio. He avoided her gaze, embarrassed, but deeply moved. "Thank you," he whispered, barely audible. She simply said, "I haven't done anything yet. I just stopped someone who was doing wrong." But inside her, something had already shifted, and no one there could imagine how big that change would become. After the argument with the manager, the atmosphere turned strange, not hostile, but thick, as if people didn't know whether to keep staring or pretend nothing had happened. Maria exhaled, wiped her face with her sleeve, and looked at Fabio. Not with pity, but with the honesty of someone who has lived through enough to recognize pain in another person. The girl finished her ice cream and hugged the empty cup to her chest like a rare treasure. Fabio knelt to talk to her, but before he could speak, his stomach growled. A loud sound, clear, harsh. The girl looked up, worried. "Daddy, are you hungry?" He tried to smile. "Just a little." Maria heard it. And when she heard it, her entire expression changed. "Have you two eaten today?" she asked, direct but gentle. Fabio hesitated. The truth was too painful to say plainly. Not really." Maria didn't wait for explanations. She simply motioned with her hand. "Come with me." Fabio's eyes widened. No, I've bothered you enough. You already spent money on—" "Come," she repeated, with a tone that left no room for refusal. "The girl needs real food, and you do too." He looked down at his daughter. She held his hand with the same grip she held the ice cream minutes earlier. "Daddy, let's go?" Fabio took a deep breath. "All right, let's go." Maria guided them through hallways Fabio had never noticed. Doors with warning signs, service elevators, areas where the floor didn't shine like the fancy storefronts. He had never seen this side of the mall. It was the side that existed only for those who worked, not for those who used to consume. They arrived at the employees' cafeteria, a simple place with plastic tables and stackable chairs. The smell of rice, beans, and hot food filled the air. A guard at the door tried to block them. "Maria, you know you can't bring—" "I know exactly what I'm doing, Kleber," she replied. "He's my guest." Kleber looked at the little girl, too small, too thin, holding onto her father's shirt. His expression softened. "All right, just this once." Maria smiled in gratitude. They walked in. The girl's eyes widened the moment she smelled the food, the warm aromas, the colorful lunch trays, the clinking of silverware. To her, that simple place felt like a feast. Maria opened her employee locker and pulled out an extra meal box. "I always bring one more," she explained. "You never know when someone might need it." She placed the food on the table. Fluffy rice, hot beans, grilled chicken, vegetables. Real food. Food that gives strength. The girl sat down, her eyes shining. "You can eat, sweetheart," Maria said, offering the first spoonful. The child didn't wait. She ate with the hunger of someone who hadn't had a proper meal in days. Fabio watched without touching anything. "And you?" Maria asked, pulling out a chair. "You just gonna stand there staring?" He shook his head. I don't want to take your meal." She let out a small laugh. "Fabio, if there's one thing life taught me, it's that shared food never runs out. Eat." He finally picked up the fork. And when he took the first bite, he closed his eyes, not for the taste, but for the feeling. It was the first hot meal he'd had in 3 days. Maria watched quietly, her eyes saying more than any speech. After a few minutes, when the atmosphere eased, she spoke. "You know, I've been hungry before too." Fabio lifted his eyes. "You have?" "Yep, more than once." She gave a sad little smile. "And someone I didn't even know helped me, just like I did now. Sometimes life spins around just to see if we learned how to be human." He stayed quiet. He swallowed hard. "Not the food, the truth. Maria, I don't deserve this. Not after the man I used to be." She shook her head. "Everyone deserves a fresh start, even you." And right there, in that simple cafeteria, with the smell of beans in the air and her soft voice echoing low, the first real spark of his transformation was born. But the world outside still wasn't done with Fabio Montero. And the worst was yet to come. The cafeteria grew quiet. The only sounds were utensils tapping and the peaceful breathing of the little girl who was finally full. It was a fragile peace, almost invisible, but peace. Maria gathered the leftover food, wiped the table, and prepared to take them back to the main area. Fabio buttoned his shirt all the way up, as if trying to hide the days of exhaustion that everyone seemed to see before he even spoke. "Thank you for everything," he said, his voice still rough. "Don't thank me," Maria replied. "Just keep going. We can figure out the rest." But when they stepped out of the service hallway, the world turned on them again. A crowd had formed near the entrance of the mall. Phones raised, cameras pointing at them, whispers that hit like punches. Fabio didn't understand at first, but Maria did. "Stay behind me," she murmured. Too late. Someone shouted, "There he is! Look at him!" The bankrupt guy living off the cleaning lady. A phone was shoved toward Fabio's face. Then another and another. Notifications popped up in real time, screens glowing in front of him like courtroom lights. The girl clung to his leg. "Daddy, what's happening?" Fabio tried to step back. "Don't film me, please," he begged. But asking the internet to stop filming today is like asking the ocean to stop making waves. A boy shoved his phone closer to Fabio's face. "Come on, big shot. Where are your fancy cars now? Where's the beach house?" Laughter, voices, mockery. Maria placed herself in front of Fabio and the child. "Enough," she shouted. "He has a daughter here. At least respect that." But no one respected anything anymore. The video showing the cleaning lady buying ice cream and then defending Fabio from the manager was already online and spreading like fire on dry grass. "Cleaning lady buys ice cream for fallen ex-millionaire. Pathetic, former boss now begging for free food. From luxury to charity, the businessman who became a beggar." Cruel comments, edited screenshots, memes. Fabio felt his chest tighten, his breath shortened, his vision blurred for a moment. His entire life, whatever was left of it, was being destroyed publicly. And then, as if destiny wanted to test him a little more, another voice appeared. A voice he recognized before he even saw the face. "So this is what you've become, Fabio?" He froze. The girl froze. Maria turned slowly. It was Helena, the ex-wife. High heels, perfect makeup, a bitter expression, and a phone in her hand, ready to use that moment, like ammunition. "I was actually waiting to see it with my own eyes," she said, crossing her arms. "People were saying you were living off favors. I thought they were exaggerating. But now I see everything was true." Fabio felt his face burn. "Helena, please, not in front of our daughter." She laughed, a cold, sharp laugh. "Our daughter," she repeated. "You really think a child should be living like this? Going hungry, depending on the charity of a cleaning lady?" Maria stepped forward instinctively. "I never let her lack anything," Helena continued. "But you dragged this girl into living like this." The girl tried to speak, but her mother ignored her completely. "I'm talking to the judge," Helena declared, lifting her chin. "I'm asking for full custody. This is more than enough proof of total incompetence." Fabio felt the ground open beneath him. "Helena, please don't do this to her." "I'm not the one doing it," she snapped back. "You are. You chose to fall this low. You chose to drag her into this miserable life." The daughter began crying silently, hugging her father with all her strength. He dropped to his knees, holding her even tighter, desperate. Maria didn't move. She watched that cruelty grow right in front of her eyes. Something inside her hardened into steel. She stepped forward calmly. "Mrs. Helena," she said, her tone unchanged, "before you jump to conclusions, you should look at your own daughter." Helena turned around, furious. "Me? Spare me! Don't you dare preach to me, lady. You're a cleaning worker. You don't know anything about raising..." Maria cut her off, with a calm so powerful it silenced half the crowd. "I know how to recognize love." She pointed at Fabio and the child. "And that man may have lost everything, but he hasn't lost his daughter's love." Helena opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Now," Maria continued, "if you want to fight him, go ahead, but don't make this child pay the price." The girl sobbed, clinging to her father's neck. Silence spread. Even the phones trembled, but Helena wasn't the type to back down. "I'm taking my daughter right now," she announced, stepping forward. The girl screamed, terrified. "No, I want to stay with Daddy!" Her voice cut through the entire parking lot. People stopped. Even the air paused. Helena tried to pull her by force. Maria grabbed the child's arm and shielded her behind her own body. "You're not ripping this girl away like that," she said. "Not today. Not like this." Helena's face turned scarlet with fury. "I'm calling the police." "Call them," Maria replied. "And when they arrive, you can explain why you're trying to drag a screaming child away in the middle of the mall without a warrant, without permission, and without a shred of common sense." The crowd stared, and for the first time, they weren't looking at Fabio with disgust. They were looking at Helena with judgment. Someone murmured, "The woman who only wanted photos with him when he was rich." Another added, "Now she's showing who she really was all along." Helena realized the tide was turning against her. She inhaled sharply, adjusted her purse and spat. "This isn't over, Fabio. I'll fight for my rights, and I'll fight for our daughters," he replied, firm for the first time in ages. Helena stormed off. The crowd slowly dispersed. But the damage was already done. Fabio was shaking, not from fear, from emotional collapse. His daughter cried into his neck. Maria knelt beside them. "Hey, it's over. She's gone. You're okay now." Fabio couldn't answer. His voice wouldn't come out. But when he finally lifted his head, something new was alive in his eyes. Pain, yes. Shame, yes. But also determination. Maria saw it, and she knew that moment was a turning point. She just didn't know something much bigger was about to happen. Something only he could fix. Something that could destroy hundreds of lives, or save them. The night felt endless. After the attack from his ex-wife, the public humiliation, the phones pointed at his face, Fabio felt like he had taken a beating in front of the entire world. Maria insisted they rest in the staff room. The girl fell asleep in her father's lap, worn out from crying. Fabio stroked her hair while staring at the ceiling, completely broken. "I became this," he whispered. "A walking tragedy." Maria, sitting in a plastic chair beside him, replied, "You didn't become anything. You're just going through a bad chapter. Bad chapters end. Good people keep going." He opened his mouth to answer, but the old phone he carried, a cheap donated device with a cracked screen, started ringing. A number he didn't know. For a moment he thought of ignoring it, but something inside him told him to answer. "Hello?" Silence for 2 seconds. Then a voice he would recognize anywhere. "Fabio, it's Renato." His blood ran cold. Renato, the ex-partner, the man who betrayed him, stole money, lied to investors, and left him carrying all the public blame for the company's collapse. "What do you want?" Fabio growled, a tone that even startled Maria. Renato exhaled shakily. His voice wasn't the voice of the arrogant CEO who used to brag in interviews saying, "Leadership means knowing you're indispensable." This voice was frightened. "Man, I need you. I'm serious. It's urgent." Fabio laughed, a broken, bitter laugh. "You need me now after ruining my life?" "I don't have time for that," Renato snapped. "If you don't come right now, hundreds of families will be affected tomorrow. Do you understand?" Fabio's heart pounded. What happened? On the other side, the truth came out in a rush. Nervous, stumbling, desperate. The central server system, the module you built, it crashed. Tadashi, the new programmer, tried messing with the internal structure, and he messed up everything. Fabio froze. A strange feeling rose through him. "This is serious, Fabio," Renato insisted. "If the system isn't back up by tomorrow, all the major clients will cancel their contracts. It will be the company's final collapse, and there might be labor lawsuits after that. I don't know how to fix it." Fabio took a few seconds to absorb the cruel irony of fate. The module he had built, he himself, was far too complex to be altered by anyone who didn't fully understand its architecture. He had warned them over and over. He had asked for more training. He had warned that internal changes could trigger a chain reaction, and no one listened. "Why didn't you call Tadashi?" Fabio asked coldly. "Because he—" Renato swallowed hard. He freaked out when he saw the mess he made, ran out of the building. "He's not answering anything." Fabio dragged his hand across his face. An entire company was at risk. Jobs, paychecks, families, people who had nothing to do with the war between him and Renato. Maria noticed his expression. Did something happen? He turned off the speaker and explained quietly, "The company might shut down tomorrow if I don't fix a system only I know how to handle." Maria stayed silent for 3 seconds, then asked, "So, are you going?" He hesitated. Everything inside him screamed no. Pride, pain, anger, humiliation. "They destroyed my life," he said. "He destroyed me." "And you're going to let that destroy even more people?" Maria shot back. "People who don't even know your name." Fabio froze. Maria continued, "Sometimes life gives us a chance to decide who we really are, not who we were, who we want to become from now on." The girl stirred and wrapped her arms around his neck, half asleep. "Daddy, are we going home?" A wave of responsibility rose inside his chest, and then he chose. "We're going," he told his daughter. "But first, Daddy needs to help some people, okay?" She nodded, trusting him completely. Maria stood up. "I'll get a taxi. You two can't take a bus at this hour." "Maria, I have no way to pay." "I said I'm getting a taxi. I didn't ask if you could pay." She smiled, the same smile from the ice cream shop. The smile that had revived a spark of dignity inside him. The company building. When they arrived, it was already late at night. The lights inside the building were still on, which meant the chaos was real and urgent. Renato appeared at the door, sweaty, frantic, nothing like the polished public image he always performed. "Thank God, Fabio. Man, the server's going crazy. We've already lost data from 3 departments. The system keeps restarting every 5 minutes. Fabio didn't answer. He just walked in. On the way to the server room, employees stared at him, ashamed, guilty for believing the lies that had been spread months earlier. He didn't say anything. He didn't blame anyone. He reached the technical center, opened the panel, and saw the graphs blinking like a crashing airplane cockpit. "Tadashi touched the core code," he said, analyzing everything in seconds. "He inserted scripts without isolation. That triggered an infinite loop." Renato went pale. "Can you fix it?" Fabio didn't look at him. "I built this from scratch. I know exactly where to go." He sat down, took a deep breath, put on the headphones, and his hands started to move. Fast, precise, certain. It was like playing an instrument only he knew how to play. Lines and lines of code scrolled across the screen as he repaired functions, cut out corrupted sections, rebuilt broken structures. Time passed, tension climbed, until the system shut down entirely. Renato panicked. "It crashed?" Fabio smirked slightly. "No, it rebooted. Clean. Indicators turned green again. Panels stopped flashing. Functions began restoring themselves one by one. And then, right in the center of the screen, the message everyone had been praying for. System stable, normal operation. Employees exhaled. Someone cried. Someone else started clapping. Renato's eyes filled with tears. "Fabio, he stuttered. "I destroyed everything between us. But today, you saved everyone." Fabio stood up slowly. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for the people who depend on this place to live." Renato swallowed hard and nodded. Maria, who had been watching from the doorway, smiled. It was a proud smile, the kind only someone who believed when no one else did could give. Fabio felt something he hadn't felt in months. Respect, gratitude, and above all, worth. The man the whole world had labeled a failure had just saved the very company that threw him to the ground, and no one there would ever forget it. The silence after the system stabilized felt almost sacred. Employees, still wide-eyed, slowly approached him, as if standing before something impossible. Some had tears streaming down their faces. Others just stared at him, the man they had judged, criticized, dismissed, now the one who saved all their jobs. Renato wiped his face with the back of his hand, trying to regain some posture, but his voice still trembled. "Fabio, I don't even have the words. I owe you an apology. Really. I did everything wrong with you. Fabio lifted one hand, cutting him off. "Renato, I'm not here to hear that." Renato froze. For a moment he thought Fabio was rejecting the apology, but then he continued, "I didn't come here for you. I came for them." He pointed to the employees. "For the families who depend on this place. For the people who believed in the company before me and after you. This is bigger than any fight we ever had." Renato swallowed hard, and for the first time, he didn't argue. Maria watched everything from the doorway. She looked small in front of all those computers and flashing screens, but her presence filled the whole room. The girl was asleep in her arms, her head resting on Maria's shoulder. When Fabio walked toward them, the girl slowly opened her eyes with a look of pure relief. "Daddy, are you done?" "I'm done, sweetheart," he said, gently brushing her cheek. "Everything's going to be okay now." Maria smiled. "I knew you would pull it off," she said. Fabio looked at her as if finally seeing everything she had done for him since the first moment. "I could only do it because you believed in me," he answered. The unexpected offer. A few minutes later, Renato called Fabio into a meeting room, the same room where, months earlier, he had pushed him out coldly, like a stranger. But now, humility weighed on every movement of his body. "Fabio, I want you to come back," he said plainly, "not as an employee, not as someone in the background, but as the technical director. The company needs you. I need you." Fabio stayed silent for a moment. "I'm not the same man who lived here," he replied, without anger. "The one who gave up everything, for numbers, for ego. I lost too much trying to protect this room." Renato nodded slowly. "I understand, but you deserve to start again, here or wherever you choose. I just want to offer that chance." Fabio looked around, at the ceiling, the glass walls, the world that once felt like his entire universe, and now seemed small. "I accept," he said, surprising even himself, "but on my terms. No arrogance, no stepping on anyone. And with time for my daughter." Renato smiled, not a businessman's smile, a human smile. "On your terms, then." Looking for Maria. Meanwhile, Maria waited in the hallway. When Fabio stepped out, she stood up quickly. "Well, did you fix everything?" He smiled, the first real smile he had given in months. "I did. And guess what? I'm not the only one who's getting a fresh start." Maria frowned. "What do you mean?" Fabio called Renato over. The ex-partner approached, still awkward. "Maria," Fabio said, "you have no idea how much you helped today. Not just me, my daughter, and every single person who still has a job because you pushed me back up when all I wanted was to collapse." She looked embarrassed. "Ah, Fabio, I just did what any decent person would do." He shook his head. "No, if it were any person, you wouldn't have been the only one helping." He took a breath. "So I want to offer you something." Maria's eyes widened. "An opportunity." "But I didn't finish school, Fabio. I never took courses, never went to college. I'm not talking about diplomas," he said. "I'm talking about heart. You have something nobody can teach, and I want you as the manager of the new social program at the company. You'll coordinate projects, help families, be the bridge between the company and the people who need support the most." Maria froze. The little girl hugged her leg and smiled. "Auntie Maria, you're gonna work with my daddy." Maria covered her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. "Fabio, are you sure? You're not just anything," he said. "You're the person who reminded me who I was when the whole world called me trash." Silence. Warm, heavy, beautiful. Then finally Maria whispered, "I accept, not because I want some fancy title, but because I know how much this could change people's lives." The girl clapped her hands and giggled. "The night ends, but life starts again." They left the building together. The city was quiet, lit by streetlights and the cold air of early morning. Fabio inhaled deeply. "You know," he said, "I thought I had lost everything, but today I realized I only lost what was never really mine." Maria smiled softly. "And you gained what you never knew you needed." He looked at his daughter, held safely in her arms, and felt his heart beat with strength. For the first time in months, there was no fear inside him, only hope, and a silent promise. His life wouldn't be defined by the fall, but by what was rising from it. The world, however, still had one final lesson, a lesson that would bring the recognition he deserved, not the loud, empty kind, but the kind that changes a person's soul. Months passed. The city stayed noisy, fast, crowded with people racing against time. But for Fabio, the rhythm had changed. He still worked hard, still had responsibilities, still needed to prove himself, but now he did everything with a different gaze. Not the gaze of someone who wants to conquer the world, but of someone who refuses to lose sight of what matters. That Saturday, he walked hand in hand with his daughter. The sun was the same sun that once burned the asphalt of the mall parking lot, but now everything felt different. "Daddy," the girl asked happily, "are we getting ice cream today?" He smiled. "Today you choose the flavor, and if you want, we can even get two." She laughed, a light, fearless laugh. They entered the mall. Some people recognized Fabio, not for the cruel videos anymore, but for something completely different. After the day he saved the company, a new story spread across the internet. The fallen ex-millionaire who, even humiliated, returned to save hundreds of families from losing their jobs. The headlines changed their tone. Bankrupt businessman or hero? Here's what Fabio did for the company. From downfall to redemption, the man who saved those who once judged him. Some still whispered, "There will always be people who talk too much and understand too little." But that public humiliation had turned into a kind of mirror. Many people suddenly saw their own attitudes reflected back at them, and most importantly, someone finally received the ending they truly deserved. On the other side of the mall, almost hidden among the bright store windows, the old security manager, Mr. Antonio, watched Fabio. He hesitated at first, but eventually gathered enough courage to walk closer. "Mr. Fabio," he said, swallowing his pride, "I wanted to apologize for what I did that day." Fabio looked at him for a moment. He could have humiliated him. He could have repaid the insult. He could have given a harsh speech in front of everyone. But he simply replied, "Back then, everybody showed who they were, including me. Today, everyone gets the chance to be different." He extended his hand. Surprised, Mr. Antonio shook it. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it happens in a simple handshake that breaks an entire cycle of resentment. The girl tugged gently on his shirt. "Daddy, can we go?" "The ice cream." He laughed softly. "Let's go." At the ice cream counter, a long line stretched out. Kids pointed at colorful flavors. Parents complained about prices. Couples shared cones. It was an ordinary scene, but for Fabio, it meant something completely different. Because in that exact ice cream shop, months earlier, he didn't even have money to buy one tiny cup. Now, he stepped closer to the counter. "One strawberry and one chocolate with sprinkles," he said, glancing at his daughter. The attendant smiled. Right away. While she prepared the orders, someone stepped beside Fabio, holding a different kind of badge. It was the mall's general director. "Mr. Fabio, correct?" he asked. "That's me. I heard about everything that happened that day. Took me too long to come talk to you," he admitted, embarrassed. "We made changes after that. Staff training, approach protocols, conduct guidelines. A lot needed fixing. And it started because of you. And because of Ms. Maria." Fabio gave a small smile. "If things really changed, then it was worth it. The girl received the ice creams and ran to sit at one of the nearby tables, swinging her legs happily. Suddenly, someone called, "Fabio!" He turned around. Maria was walking toward them across the food court, wearing a badge completely different from the blue uniform that once felt like a burden. Now she wore a simple, neatly pressed blouse with the company's logo embroidered on it. On the badge it read, "Maria, Social Projects Coordinator." She looked the same, and at the same time entirely transformed. Fabio raised a hand, smiling. "Well, look who arrived right on time for ice cream." The girl ran to her. "Auntie Maria, now you work with my daddy." "I do," she said, crouching to the girl's height. "And we're going to help a lot of families together, okay?" The child giggled, hugging the two people who, each in a different way, had held her life up when everything seemed to collapse. A few days later, an important meeting took place at the company headquarters. A full room, employees seated in rows, internal cameras broadcasting to all branches. Fabio stood at the front, next to Maria and the other directors. He looked at everyone and began, "Before we talk about goals, numbers, and results, I need to talk about something nobody puts in a spreadsheet: character." Silence filled the room. "I used to think being rich meant never needing anyone. Today, I understand real wealth is knowing who stands with you when you lose everything." He gave a quick glance at Maria, who lowered her head, moved. "My life collapsed," he continued. "Many judged me. Many turned their backs. But the only person who reached out was the one the world barely noticed, the cleaning lady, the one who scrubbed the floors I walked on when I thought I was too important." Some employees swallowed hard. "If this company has a future, it's not because of my technical skill or strategic vision. It's because someone reminded us through action what humanity looks like." He then pointed toward Maria. "And that's why today, officially, this social program will carry her name. Project Maria, because we should never again forget that the hand that saves us often comes from where our pride refuses to look." Applause erupted. "Strong, real," Maria cried quietly, not out of sadness, but out of something she had never felt so intensely before: recognition. That night at home, Fabio sat beside his daughter on her bed. "Daddy," she asked softly, "are you still scared of losing everything?" He paused for a moment. "Not like before, sweetheart." "Why not?" He smiled gently. "Because now I know the important part isn't what I have. It's who I become, and who I have by my side." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I'll always stay by your side." He inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of those words. It wasn't the cars. It wasn't the penthouse. It wasn't the contracts. It was this: a child who chose to stay with him when his world crumbled, and a cleaning lady who chose to see him as human when everyone else saw only failure. That was the real wealth. And this is where you, the one watching this story, comes in. At some point in your life, you will stand in one of these places, on the side of the one who falls, or on the side of the one who can reach out a hand. The world is full of people pointing fingers, recording, laughing, but only a few stop. Look someone in the eyes and say, "I can help," not because you earned it, but because I can. So the question is, who do you want to be in this story? If this story touched you, if at any moment you saw yourself in one of these characters, drop a comment saying what moved you the most. Tell if you've ever helped someone in a hard moment, or if someone helped you when everyone else turned away. That helps this message reach more people. And if you enjoy stories like this, raw, human, with pain, turns, and justice in the end, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because there are many more coming that might make you look at your own life in a different way. And don't forget to leave a like and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that sometimes the greatest kind of wealth lies in the simple gesture the world doesn't notice. Because, at the end of the day, one ice cream given at the right moment can change someone's life forever.